I'll let you know when that is now. So you can start dialing me on that. I think it's probably a good time to start dialing me on that. I have to look at my calendar and see when. I think that's probably the be honest, they've added one for a long time. They've only been on one call. So I don't remember her name. And sometimes it's Jenna, sometimes she's right.
She said, she tells me
Totally off the record. So far off the record, the train's not even going to.
all right.
I'm sorry, just gonna walk, no reading, no reading.
Makes everybody else feel bad.
That's right.
Kara.
Desiree, would you like to come forward? Exactly, that's right.
Karen, I love it when you put that on Facebook. I just pretty quick there. You might have to like that comment a couple times, but it's not around my whole organization. But by that time, I already have it.
Yeah, I'm going to miss that one meeting, but I'll make. Yeah. Her cousin is getting married.
So there's
Three businesses.
yeah.
Good evening, and thank everyone for attending tonight's meeting. It's nice to
See you, full house. Today is October the 3rd, 2017. The time is now 6 p.m. Regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Trinidad will now come to order. Would you please rise for the pledge of allegiance? And afterwards, would you please stay standing for just a moment of silence for the tragedy that occurred yesterday in Las Vegas, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And like I said, I think everyone knows, just a reminder, this is a tragedy that should not take place. Fortunately, we live in a time where there are serious issues out there and people that are not, their minds are not where they should be. It can happen anywhere. It can happen in Trinidad, Colorado, just like it happened in Las Vegas, Nevada. We must, as a community, remain vigilant at all times. If you see something, say something, because it could save somebody's life. Thank you. I have a proclamation here. Proclamation for the Conflict Resolution Month, October 2017, and every October hereafter in perpetuity. Whereas conflict resolution encompasses mediation, arbitration, facilitation, collaborative decision-making, restorative processes, and other responses to differences. And whereas the conflict resolution process empowers individuals, families, communities, organizations, and businesses to foster communication and devise solutions that are acceptable to the needs and interests of all parties involved. And whereas conflict resolution is taught and practiced by citizens in many school systems, universities, and graduate programs throughout Colorado and the world as a way of solving disputes, and whereas community-based programs fairly and equitably resolve neighborhood and community conflicts, thereby strengthening local relationship, and whereas professional associations of conflict mediators promote peaceful and creative resolution to disputes. Now therefore, I, Philip G. Rico, Mayor of the City of Trinidad, Colorado, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of October 2017 and every October hereinafter in perpetuity as Conflict Resolution Month, in recognition of the ongoing commitment to collaborative and constructive means of conflict resolution now and in the future. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of this city to be affixed. Wanted to mention that a couple of people that brought this to our attention, I guess previous Senator Linda Newell and Suzanne Vandermeer, is the way to pronounce your name? Those are two people that brought this conflict resolution proclamation to our attention that we should try to do something. So thank them for doing that. No one is here to accept tonight, but we will pass these proclamations on to them. Pass those down to Tom. Yes. Roll call, please.
Bernardo, Fletcher,
Here.
Lopez,
Here.
Messi,
Here.
Miles,
Here.
Torres, Rico.
Here. Are there any recommendations of changes to the agenda? If none, motion to approve the agenda, please, Bobby.
On the consent agenda, I think that we need to discuss the school district security agreement
Okay,
and would ask that that be removed.
okay.
I will second that.
So we have a motion first and a second to remove the school security agreement renewal from the consent agenda, which is item 4D. Roll call please on that.
Fletcher,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Matei,
Yes.
Miles,
Yes.
Torres. Yes. Rico.
Yes. The motion to approve the amended agenda, please.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Fletcher,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Matei,
Yes.
Miles,
Yes.
Torres. Yes. Rico.
Yes. Item 2, policy items and staff reports. Item 2A, discussion of dog tethering and confinement, local law enactment.
We've received several complaints in the last few weeks and months about some of the treatment of animals in town. And our current ordinances really don't address how and whether animals are tethered to ropes, how they're kept on those things, how big a dog run has to be, those types of issues. And there's some concern that because of that not being regulated, that there's people that are, in some people's opinion, abusing animals. So is this something, we gave you a lot of different options from different states and different localities about tethering, but this is also an issue regarding how big a cage should be, those kind of things for animals that are kept outside. So if you would like us to look into it based on some of these, if there's one or two of these that you would like us to follow up a little bit more, or go in maybe a little bit different direction, we just wanted to see if it's a policy we'd like to pursue.
Mr. Matei, would you please, do you have any questions? or
Well, I
anything on the report?
agree. If we have an ordinance, it needs to be substantive enough that it's enforceable. And when they're vague and non-specific, it becomes problematic for all concerned. So anything that we can do to make that more applicable, I think is a good idea. And it begs some research in order to get to an ordinance, and a group of circumstances that better serve our needs.
I agree.
Ms. Fletcher, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have questions, and I agree with
My concern is when we do enhance, if we choose to, this ordinance, who will we be relying on for information to, go and seek out these potential ordinance breakers? Will it be our current code enforcer? Will it be on, people in the community who will be calling in? What are the thoughts so far? I mean, I've read some of these others where it describes how they describe lengths, sizes, but what about the enforcement itself? What are your thoughts?
Ordinarily, these kind of things are enforced by police officers noticing an animal in a certain way, or by complaints coming from the public.
Okay. I'm just concerned if we're going to maybe have to enhance our staff with an additional person in order to accomplish this.
I think
correct?
we'd have to just see where it goes.
Okay. That's all I wanted to ask.
Yeah, just further to your comments, Mr. Lopez, I had a problem with the dog in my neighborhood when I lived in my old place, and I called, and the response was quick. And you don't even have to give your name if you're worried that it's your next door neighbor or somebody's gonna, vandalize you because you do that. I mean, I'd leave it to you to decide that, but I think, who's our current animal control officer?
Nick Yerkeba.
Yeah, I think there may be some capacity there, but, we can play it by ear. Just feedback for you, this was near and dear to my subject, to my heart subject. I went through all the states, and I thought the most complete was Nevada. And Nevada, sorry. The only additions I would make is that they allow, you cannot be tied up for more than 14 hours in a 24-hour period. I think that's long. I think it should be more like 4, maybe 6. I don't know what's reasonable here. The other thing that Nevada doesn't address is pens or cages. And I think that length of time should be similar to what the tethering length of time would be. And then lastly, inclement weather. It makes a difference if it's 0 versus 40. And I don't think, especially short-haired animals, should be left on a tether in sub-zero temperature for even 4 hours. So those are my feedback. That's my feedback.
I say yes. If you have to put an animal on a rope or a chain, you probably shouldn't own one. Just my opinion.
All right, well, we'll work something up and bring it back.
You know, one of the things that I see is that it's a concern, if we adopt a tethering ordinance, some of these dogs that are currently tethered, can be pretty vicious. And I think that some of these dogs will have to maybe be monitored, let these people know that if they have a dog that's, vicious, and then that's the reason why sometimes they get like that is because they are tethered. So I think that they're gonna have to be, they should monitor their dog more closely. I think you mentioned about the size of the cage, and I think somebody in there mentioned like a 10 by 10 cage.
Yeah, I think Rhode Island had something on cages.
I think what we ought to do is, mention per the dog size, per poundage, if it's a dog weighs, 3 or 4 pounds, it should be this big. If it's such and such size, it needs to be that much bigger, because a larger dog requires more space to be able to exercise. So I think that's something that maybe you might want to include in the ordinance. Other than that, like I said, I'm in agreement with everybody else. I think that tethering is not good, and short-term tethering sometimes is okay. If, for instance, let's say somebody from the city department is going to go do a inspection of some kind, either tether or put them in the house, I think that's okay temporarily, but after that they should be good with it.
Okay, thank you.
Smile, Mr. Lieutenant.
Well, you talk about dogs that need to be inside. I had a bulldog one time that ate the meter reader's computer. That one cost me $100 at doggy court. And the bulldog went to live in Alamosa.
All right. Anything else? Good? Thank you. Okay, item 2B, bidding and purchases.
We have been experiencing a need maybe for a little more flexibility as before things get to the point of formal bid now, they do that at $30,000. In some cases, we're not even being able to buy a vehicle at $30,000 anymore. And that used to be plenty enough money to buy a vehicle. But we're running into more of them. The other thing too that would be nice is if we could rely on some of the standard bidding or vetting services that are out there. I put some information in the packet about NJPA. I don't think you should use that to select a low bid, because that's not what that's designed for. But it could get you to the point of having comparable bids, so that you know when something is fair or if it's out of line. And then also when we have to get several quotes for minimal purchases now, and in some cases those are pretty small. So it's going the other way too. That we can't buy much for $500. I don't have any problem with getting quotes. I think having competitive situations is good, but I think we need to allow our people to buy things.
Start with Ms. Torres. Any questions? Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I agree with Mr. Sun.
Okay. Ms.
I
Miles?
think as far as I can tell, the last time this was updated was 2002. So it's 15 years ago. So I agree in principle. I'm just curious, do you have any amounts in mind to change the levels?
The number for vehicles and equipment, the number being thrown around by the E-team was in the 50 to 60,000 range. And maybe with, before we have to go to quotes, raise that to at least 1,000.
From 5?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Now, 50 to 60,000 is what they would like to raise that rate to from 30. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is there any conflicting situations with our charter with this?
I think the charter is an overarching document. This gives more specificity than you get out of the charter.
Well, but the same token, we've still got to abide by the charter and make sure that we don't violate it.
I'm not saying we're not following the charter. The charter doesn't usually get into that kind of detail.
if you can do me a favor and send us all an email with that specific language, that way we can make sure that it is vague enough to where we can work within the parameters of the, charter.
I'd be happy to.
I'd be amenable to raising that range from 50 or from 30 to 50 to $60,000.
Ms. Fletcher?
I got a little confused in the no cost, no obligation. So is there nothing in it for them to be our contract with them?
The NJPA,
Yeah.
that is an organization that's set up, it comes out of Minnesota, and there's other organizations similar to it, but there isn't any cost to join it. The difference that they do is when they give out prices, that's the maximum amount that vendor would charge. So you can't look at it and think that that's a bid amount. But it, like the price can vary based on how many units you buy, those kind of things. The city of New York might buy 30 or 40 fire trucks. They get a better price than someone who buys one.
So it's not an exclusive list of vendors that they have solicited, right?
They have that, and I look at them more as a vetting service than I do a bidding service. They go through and they make sure that these companies are capable of providing the equipment that they bid to everywhere in the country instead of one small locality, that they are able to provide the equipment and vehicles that they bid, that they have a good track history in selling those and delivering what they say they're going to sell. I think there's 5 or 6 different categories they follow. It doesn't hurt to sign up with them, but I don't think you want to use them as saying this is the low bid.
Okay, that answers it.
To sign up with them does not necessarily bind us to them, correct?
No.
Okay, I think that the spirit and the intent of the limits was to monitor and regulate, and that certainly seems prudent. But at the same time, as circumstances change, and over the course of 15 years, I imagine there have been significant changes. In the interest of efficiency, if for no other reason in government, we probably need to adjust and adapt so that we are better using staff time and not continuing to use a very cumbersome and outdated process.
Something that Mr. Lopez just brought up the charter here, and I'll read that particular part about competitive bidding, and I think we're probably okay. It says all purchases of or contracts for supplies, material, or equipment shall be made under such rules and regulations with respect to competitive bidding as the council may prescribe. So that, to me, that word prescribe means that we probably set some parameters different than we've had in the past. Is that council, what would you say?
I agree. I think that's absolutely correct interpretation of that charter provision. That's absolutely correct.
Go ahead.
Do you distinguish between goods and services?
Yes.
Because it's one thing to buy a Chevy Tahoe, it's another thing to contract for engineering services.
Typically, when you do professional services, you use a process called qualification-based selection instead of basing it strictly on price. It comes down to price eventually, but you make the choice based on the professionalism, the history, capability of providing the service that they say they're going to do, what their history is from anything you can find out, and you pick one that you feel is most qualified and you negotiate the fees with them. And where it really gets to fees more than anything is if you feel that they are not charging the range of fees that you feel that you're comfortable with, you can go to the next proposer.
So would you propose changing these limits for just goods or goods and services?
Goods and services. It's because qualification-based selection is really a good process for engineers, architects, attorneys, those kind of things. Because how they're going to perform is far more important to you than getting the low bid. Another thing we could look at that's being done is there's reverse auctions. There's a company called Ritchie and Company we can buy things online with. There's a lot of options out there today that weren't available when this was last updated. So I wanted to explore all of those and bring back to you something that we can take a look at.
Yeah, if you just applied inflation to 15 years, it's probably closer to 50,000, 60. That would be my minor feedback. I don't know how other people feel.
Okay.
You mentioned, because it's pretty generic in there, in charter about just goods and services, and one other item I think that might be, to add to that, goods, services, to me, goods are miscellaneous items, services are like engineering, and I think maybe adding equipment to that, because equipment is totally different from the goods and the services. So that would be something we need to consider. I had a couple of options to it in case you want to consider them. I'm in agreement with raising the limit. I think that's probably a good idea. The one thing I wanted to mention, typically, unless something drastic happens, a large piece of equipment, let's say a backhoe breaks down, or a or a large piece of fire equipment or something comes up. Prior to, in our budget, it's a budgeted amount that's in there. That, let's say a piece of equipment is going to cost $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever it is. And you come to council prior to saying this is probably what we're going to need in the next 6 months to look at it. We would give authorization to get to a certain dollar amount. It could be $50,000, it could be $100,000, depending on the type of piece of equipment that might be. So I think that may be something that you might consider as well.
Okay.
Because as you know, you can buy a backhoe for $40,000 on a used market, but you go into a new market and you're going to run $75,000 pretty easy. So those type of pieces of equipment get pretty expensive quickly. So basically giving the city manager a maximum dollar amount for procurement on particular items. That's what I was looking at. Okay.
I have one last question. Would it be the sole discretion of the city manager at the time, and only the sole discretion of the city manager, or to be able to utilize these funds without coming before council?
That's the way it's addressed now. So there's a range that the department heads can spend, and then there's a range that I can operate above that.
Okay.
I don't think you want to tie the hands of people and say.
No, that's what I want to keep, is that if only one has the ability to, not 2, 3, 5, 7, whatever, just one.
It's more for the larger items.
Right.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you. Item 3, petitions or communications, oral or written. Okay, Trinidad Soup Kitchen. Someone here from the Trinidad Soup Kitchen wants to speak.
He's coming.
Yes, right here. Hi, sorry about that. Good afternoon, everybody. I have a little option as far as trying to feed the people in Trinidad that pose that they're hungry and homeless. My option is to go out there and collect money with them and donate to the Trinidad Soup Kitchen, so the Soup Kitchen can provide more food for them. What I'd like to do is go out there, stand next to them with a box of lunch and say, here's a box of lunch, here's a voucher if you need more food, here's a voucher if you need gas, we can give you a $20 gas voucher, so you spend it on gas, not anything else. And we compete with them. Now the ones who are really needing the services will eat the lunch, go get the gas voucher, and go on. The ones who are actually taking advantage of us, who are making lots of money, they'll be kind of put out of business. So I'm not telling them to leave, they can stand next to me. But as I have this and everything I give goes to the Soup Kitchen, the more people would give to me than they would give to them. So you don't have to put a sign up, we'll get 3 or 4 of us on the corners. So when we see a bunch of panhandlers out there with the signs, we can go out there with box lunches and vouchers and say, we're trying to help you, but we're gonna stay on the street corner with you or without you and try to help you with more money coming in. And with this, they could be $1,000 a day to a Soup Kitchen. They could do a lot of work and a lot of good for the homeless and the people who are hungry. And I think anybody that's hungry should get 2 meals a day, a box lunch and then a warm meal. And if we can make money just on our own for the Soup Kitchen and donate to the Soup Kitchen, I think they could do that with more money. So basically, I'm trying to get volunteers and workers to go out there and hit a corner up, like the Walmart corners or around the Sonic area, where they are, because they got the best spots. And so like Lowe's always go to where the Home Depot is, they go right across the street. We go in the same street corner. Now, they can't tell us to leave because it's public property, and we can't tell them to leave. But we can kind of put them out of business for the ones who are scamming the system. Now, the ones that really need help, that's ones we will help. So that's my proposal. I'd like to get kind of a support from the city a little bit. I've asked a lot of people in the fire, police department if they have an off-duty officer that would like to kind of secure me so I can make sure the homeless person doesn't want to get in a fight with me since I'm kind of taking over his corner. So everything is, and everybody likes the idea. So this would be the can that we put in. It's locked so that people know you're giving a soup kitchen, not to me, it's not going in my pocket. And then we give this a soup kitchen and they do whatever they need to do with it.
And Mayor, council members, for the record, this is Mr. Brad Kirby, who was just addressing you. If I could, and I don't mean to
Yeah, I
interrupt
was
or
gonna
respond.
ask you if you had any concerns as
Well,
for council.
I would just say, it sounds kind of dangerous to me. I mean, just that people, homeless people may not be happy that, especially if they have quarters that are preferred, that somebody's going to be standing there trying to, get their donations. It seems a little dangerous.
That's why I would have volunteers in the cars to watch me. Also, we would go in groups. We wouldn't go just by ourselves. If there's a woman that wants to work and do it, I'd make sure there's 2 or 3 guys also around her, and also get an off-duty police officer to protect. And if I can say that there's a police officer over there and there's somebody filming over there, let's not go get into this. And if they do, they're assaulting me and they go to jail at that point. So I understand your concerns and I agree with you.
It's also kind of government-sanctioned, competitive panhandling. Just to come up with a term. That's kind of what it is. And I'm just hearing this for the first time, and on many levels it sounds great, but in some respects it kind of concerns me. I want to think about it, and that's kind of labor-intensive if you have 3, 4, 5 people who are going to be out there.
Right. Now and it says I work for the soup kitchen, so it's not going to be volunteer free if you're out there for 4-hour shift out in the corner. I will pay $10 an hour. So actually, if we have a homeless person that's creditable, we can actually give them a job to collect money for the soup kitchen and more of us. And there's a lot more you can do with this money if we make enough. We might be able to get enough money so we can rent an area like the old drive-in and have an area for the homeless that we can send them to, and where they can get work and everything else from the city and the people of the city. I think this is actually, it's not through the city, it's through the soup kitchen, which is not part of the city. I've got their okay with it. I went to them first. And they said, we could use an extra $1,000 a day. That'd be really nice. And so that's my.
I think what we're doing, I'll just make a comment, is that in the near future, we want to have a work session concerning panhandling. We discussed this, and I think that would be time we'll invite you to maybe get in more depth on it. So we come up, let's see if that would work. Get some more information from you.
Absolutely.
See what comes up.
Yeah, I would like to know if there's any kind of laws against it, but we don't have any laws against them.
Right.
Right.
I'm just competing. They can't tell me to leave, I can't tell them.
Just basically giving us a heads up.
Yes, giving our heads up. They might have a story in the paper coming up. I've got 2 shirts and 2 buckets, and people are willing to do that right away. Right now, the panhandlers gone down. It seems like they're leaving because it's getting colder. There's very few, but still we have a few.
Ms. Miles has a question. She's going to contact you personally and talk to you.
Yeah, I have some ideas, maybe doing it without city offices.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Save Our River from PRRC. Sorry.
You're suffering.
REM won the Grammys. Saved by different.
I'm on a roll. What can I
You look like me at work, work I'm in here. I change the suit.
Hi, I'm Brad Kirby. I have some information out here. There you go.
Thank you. Your 5 minutes is beginning again.
I can't cheat the system a little bit. Okay. So I have an idea to clean up the river. You know how you adopt a highway? I think the businesses around town should help the city and adopt a section of the river. So they go in there, they cut everything down 5 feet and below so the homeless people can't hide in there. They clean up the trash, and we're not talking once a year. We're talking when they maintain it the whole year. Now, in this chart, I have little sections, and it doesn't have to be exact. We can work out how much land every business would get. But they would take an area. PRRC, Purgatory River Run Company. I would take the one at Cromwell because that's where I take out. Also, Trinidad Photography Gallery, TGY, would be the ones to take around the loop, I-25 bridge, because that's where I like to put in from my county. I'm biased. This is for my Inner company next year. I can't have a bunch of homeless people and people walking up down the river where our families don't want to go down there anymore, and we need to take the river back in our own hands. So the best way is to get the community to respond and let the businesses put in $500 or 50 hours worth of work every year to keep their little section of the river nice, where they can plant flowers, they can do whatever, as long as with the okay with the land and what trees we want and what we don't want, and work with the city as far as the businesses. And then you can put out a little plaque, this section of the river is sponsored by so-and-so business. Now I've got my two companies, Trout Unlimited, Mooses, Bricks, Buckets, Tease Me, Treat Me, they're all in it with me. So pretty much that's my 5 minutes. Any questions on that? What we can do to take back the river?
We don't comment during this, so what we do is we might bring you back at some point in time to discuss it further.
That'd be great.
Okay.
I will contact you for all the attorneys.
Thank you very much. I gotta set that down. Okay, item 3A, Trinidad Blues Fest, incorporated event highlights and community band share back.
All right. Rusty Goodall, Chairman of Trinidad Hill Blues Fest.
Jerry Campbell, Executive Director of Trinidad Hill Blues Fest.
So a quick follow-up on this year's Blues Fest. Looks like our numbers are up. Oh, Miss Karen Griego. Treasurer. Lucky Murphy. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't see you. I'm not used to having this much company up here. So this year at the Blues Fest, it looks like our numbers were up around 600. We're in the neighborhood of 4,800 people. It looks like this year is going to be one of our more profitable years, which leads us to the next reason we'll be here, and that's to share some money back to the community. I'd also like to thank the city of Trinidad for the sponsor, the partnership that we formed like we've never had from the city before, and it shows in how successful this event has become and how we will see expansion beyond what we did last year with the downtown pre-fest party. We're looking to expand on that, more different entertainers instead of the same entertainers, 2 different locations. And more ideals, I'm working with the city manager at this part, trying to look for sites we can provide camping and stuff along these lines to get more people in town to even make the fest bigger. Anything to add to that, sir?
I do want to reiterate the fact that we thank the city, the economic development, the tourism board, everyone who was involved. Arts and culture, everyone who was involved to help make this spectacular event again. Our lineup this year was easily the best lineup we've ever had, and it's going to be hard to top next year, but I believe we're going to do that. We're well on the way to doing that already.
Could be
I don't know if Rusty's been reading
I've been reading my emails, and then looking at the acts, we're getting close to start entering in contracts for next year. Already had meetings with the city to assure that we will have a partnership as same as before, so that we can continue to be successful.
I agree. So let's give some money away.
Let's give some money away. So this year, I believe we have 8 organizations,
Right.
and we have $6,500 we're fixing to give back to the community of nonprofit organizations. most of these organizations, and we try to always prefer to give money to organizations with kids. This year we expanded to the police department in 2 different areas. I'll let you see as we call them out and give away some money.
I'll let you do the honors.
You're right on. Trinidad Bowling Association.
Oh, I forgot you need some specs.
I have them in my pocket. So I believe the Trinidad Bowling Association has a youth scholarship program. Mr. Dan Rossetti's here to give that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. Thank you for all your help.
Thank you.
Community chest. Oh, that was $500, by the way. $500 in that envelope. So we have $500 to the community chest. They provided a lot of volunteers for us this year, and it's another good cause.
Thank you.
All right. Shop with the Cop PD. Shop with the Cop, yeah. Shop with the Cop this year took over our shuttle service, and they made some money with that. We'd like to give them another $500 to go along with that for the Shop with the Cop program.
And they also did an outstanding job.
Outstanding job.
Thank you. Thank you so
Noah's
much.
Ark. Noah's Ark. Miss Goodall? Noah's Ark's always been one of our recipients, and they receive $1,000 this year.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodall.
The Trinidad Fire Department Toy Drive. Another organization that benefits needy kids at Christmas time. Always been a big part of this. Santa Claus for over 20 years I did. Drew, you do a great job. $1,000.
Thank you so much.
Trinidad High School Band Department.
Yes.
Yeah. Another organization for kids. $1,000 for the Trinidad High School Band Department.
Police Scholarship Foundation.
The Trinidad Police Scholarship Foundation. This is our first year giving to this. This is $1,000 we're giving to the Police Department Scholarship Program. Chief, you're very welcome. Last but not least, the TSJC Education Foundation for the robotics class. Here's a $1,000 check to further support the TSJC robotics class. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hayden, for all your help.
Thank you guys.
So this is just another prime example of when an organization will work with the city, the things that we can do. And I'm very proud of what we're able to accomplish this year, and I look forward to many more years.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
Item 4, consent agenda approval. We have approval of the regular meeting minutes of September the 19th, 2017. Item B, setting of a public hearing date for capital budget estimates and the 2018 annual budget to be held at 6 p.m. on October the 17th, 2017. Item C, the golf course clubhouse lease renewal. Item D was stricken. Item E was bills. Item F, payroll September the 23rd, 2017 through October the 6th, 2017. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Call vote, please.
Yes, I have a discussion. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused. The alteration to, I guess in section 4, is that in the golf course clubhouse lease renewal?
No, this is for the entire.
No, this is just for the club.
Okay, good. I thought there were two items, so.
Okay, so this is just one. Okay, any other discussion on it? Call vote, please.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Matei?
Yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Torres?
Yes, except for A, the approval of the minutes, as I was not here on September 19th.
Rico?
Yes. Okay, we don't have any public hearings or unfinished business. On to item 7, miscellaneous business. Item 7A, ARPA board appointment to Councilwoman Michelle Miles. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'd love to do it, but my council term is up in 2 years. I'd like it to be coterminous with that. No. I'll reconsider at the time.
You can't do that, you have to die and even then be upset.
Any other discussion items?
It'll be 7.5 years. It's a long time
It
to
is.
ride into Holly.
Well, I just wanted to, I really want to say that last week I attended the first ARPA meeting that I attended, and we do have someone that really represents Trinidad very well. I sat through that morning meeting, and the discussion that ensued and some of the items that she brought up made me realize how good of a person that we have on that board. So,
Thank you, and also Bob Fabric.
Yes, and Bob Fabric,
Contributes a
yes.
lot.
Anyway, with that, call vote, please.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Matei?
Yes.
Miles?
Abstain?
Oh.
Yes, I mean, I'm fine with that. I don't think you can work for yourself.
Torres?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes. Item 7B, consideration of bridge results for number 14-2017 dam remediation project to Purgatory Valley Construction in the amount of $35,000. Motion to approve the bid.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Beach with Jaffers.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Tom Beach, Public Works Director. This is a quote, an estimate to repair and remediate damage and vegetation and some repair work to 3 flood control dams throughout the city. As you can see, the bids were a little varied, to say the least. Having been the one that did the walkthrough, it was a mandatory walkthrough. I had both of the bidders on either side of me on 2 out of the 3 dams, and everybody received the same package. So I'm confident that the bid is a substantial and qualified bid. I know there were some issues with that. We do need to get this done to be in compliance with the Department of Natural Resources, Water Division, keep up with it. We have a little bit of paperwork to do after the fact, picture taking, form reports and all. So, I'll answer any questions or entertain any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Matei?
Other than the obvious discrepancy in the bid,
Understandable.
but nothing that would allow for a better understanding?
I
It's
don't.
just so significant,
Yes.
I'm perplexed.
Yes.
We're
and
not
I'm
missing
sure-
anything.
Like I said, on the walkthrough, they were both with me,
Gotcha.
both contractors.
I heard you.
And they received the actual report from the Department of Natural Resources as to what needed to be done on each of the situations.
Thank you.
Do the specs like read the same too?
Oh, yes, yeah, I mean, it's the actual report from the Department of Natural Resources.
It's interesting.
My question is for the bids themselves, did they come out with the same or similar amount of hours, amount of crew members?
Or
Or did they just, you didn't receive that, or?
It's a lump sum, actually it was a lump sum, bid, actually, no, that's not true. It was per dam, and they were equally disparate between each one.
So per dam, that's the total price between these 2 competitors? Per dam or?
No, total, that's your total.
That's our total,
Yeah,
okay, that's
per
what
dam.
that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is there any difference because maybe, and I don't know this, is there a certain standard that the Army Corps of Engineers places on certain companies versus others that could increase a bid, like insurance, licensing, bonding, insurance, all those
Well,
other
the
things?
city has that anyhow, we have the license, insurance, and bonding, but we don't.
Right, but I'm just trying to make
The
sure
Department of
that,
Natural Resources really isn't involved in that way in this particular situation. just providing the scope of work.
Okay.
Scott?
No further questions.
Ms. Torres? Yeah, I don't have any questions. I saw a discrepancy.
There's a discrepancy, that's for sure.
Okay.
I was there, so I can tell you that everybody heard the
As
same.
long as they all got the same information, what you said they did, then that's all we can go on. Okay. Call vote, please.
Fletcher.
Yes.
Lopez.
Yes.
Matei.
Yes.
Miles.
Yes.
Torres. Yes. Rico.
Yes.
Thank you, Council.
Item 7C, consideration of quotes for the purchase of a 2018 Ford Explorer for the fire department. Motion to approve the bid.
So moved.
Second? Second. Chief, what do you have for us?
Any questions, or?
Mr. Matei, you have any questions?
I don't.
Ms. Fletcher?
What, was it a per bid? Is it a bid?
No, there were quotes.
Okay.
We put out the quotes. We didn't go through a formal bidding process.
This is 2923, okay. That's all.
I have concerns. There have been a lot of recalls with the Ford Explorer lately, and where people that have been, especially like the Enforcer Edition for the police department and other privately owned vehicles where they're having carbon monoxide poisoning. Is there any way we can look into another vehicle if this one is one of those potentially dangerous vehicles?
I talked with the Ford dealership today, and they said yes, they are aware of that. It's coming from a crack in a manifold, and they think it was a manufacturing defect. They are aware of it, and they assured me that it would not be a problem on the 18 models.
Okay, I've just got some concerns because I don't want one of our guys driving around and have an accident and even worse, get injured or killed.
I have one of my personal vehicles is an 03 Dodge Ram 1-ton 4-wheel drive. In 2013, I got a recall notice that the driver's airbag could explode at any time. You're going to have factory recalls on items, and on my truck it was 10 years afterwards. So they are aware of the problem, and they are addressing that problem right now.
Mr. Sund,
Yes.
is there any way that we can validate this through some type of literature or signed document proving that this engineering defect has been remedied?
We can surely ask the dealer to provide us whatever Ford has, why they think the 18s are safer, just to make everyone feel more comfortable with it.
I would, because then we can always say that this issue that was in the news as of lately is not something that we just blindly said, yeah, we'll take one of those even though we knew that there was a potential problem. And it's not that I don't want to get you a vehicle. It's not that at all. I'm just concerned about the Ford Explorer at this point. And I don't want there to be an accident.
We will with the Explorer simply because it is a standard vehicle. The police departments and fire departments all around the country are using them. Now the fire departments haven't shown too many problems with them. I know that the police departments have. And there are a lot of places that are pulling them all off until they can be looked at. It's not with every vehicle that's out there, it's just with some of them. And the reason we went with the Explorer, it is one of the cheaper vehicles. If we went with a Chevy Tahoe, you can add another $8,000 to $10,000 to the price for basically the same size vehicle that does the same thing.
I'm okay with this if we can get something in writing that states that their engineering defect has been remedied.
Okay.
Ms. Miles?
No further questions.
Mr. Torres?
Thank you.
So questions that I have, one thing that, you put in a basic bid, and it's $29,023. But then there is the package that goes of that's $6,792. Whenever you have multiple bids, why isn't the accessory package included with that bid that we are accepting?
In the bid that we're looking at, it's from the same company. The $6,792. Bradley Ford is going to provide us with the vehicle, and they will, once they get the vehicle and check it out, it goes to another company. that will do all the upgrades on it, put on the additional lights, the light bar, the sirens, the striping, all of that. If we bought one here from Cook Motor, we would have to go somewhere else to do that. If we bought one from GSA, we would also have to get, we'd also have to find our own contractor for it. I did get a quote from MHQ out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, but it was for a Chevy Tahoe, and it was a total of $49,372 for a Chevy Tahoe, and that was also allocated. So we're looking at roughly a $15,000 savings going with the Explorer.
I was just kind of curious why it wasn't all included with the package, or why we, but it sounds like you answered my question, is that there's a different company that handles the accessory package versus the actual vehicle, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Any other questions? None? Okay, call the vote, please.
Fletcher,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes, with the exception that we do get something in writing from Ford.
Ms. Haig,
Yes.
Miles,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Rico.
Yes. Item D, entertainment district event. Motion to approve. So moved. Second?
Yes, second.
Okay.
Good
Ms.
evening,
Marshall.
Mr. Mayor. Yes, members of council. Tara Marshall, Development Services Director, joined by Marilyn Riesler, the chair of the Corzo New Trinidad Creative District. At the last meeting, Mr. Mayor, you asked us to plan a party, so that's what we've done. And the city has been partnering with the Creative District to do that, so Ms. Loser's going to talk a little bit about the celebration we have planned.
And first, I'd like to say thank you to all of the council members and our mayor and staff and everyone in the city involved in working so hard and being so tremendously supportive in order to get all of this moving forward. I think there was a cumulative sigh of relief when we heard that the CHAFA approval had been granted for 100% of the ask, and it was like, yes! So Mr. Mayor and I spoke months ago about having a party if this came through, and it did, and we are. So we've got planned for the 12th of October, this coming week from Thursday, to do entertainment district again, close down street in front of the project itself, and Tara has arranged for long tables to be put down Main Street, and we'll cover that with brown paper and provide crayons for everyone to be creative in the district. And so we look forward to having a lot of people come and join us in celebration. Things certainly aren't completely finished yet. There are lots of I's to dot and T's to cross, and paperwork and contracts to be signed, and agreements to be developed and signed, and on and on and on. So it's kind of like buying a house. You come to agreement, you get everything in place, and then you wait, and you wait, and you wait some more for the final. And they're planning to have one large closing, so they won't be working in the two different locations for space to create. They'll package it all together, so there will be a single closing that will probably take place in the spring, most likely late spring. And once that happens, chances are they'll get started on construction almost immediately. So there's a little more waiting involved, but we do have some information, updates and such for the community that we'll be handing out on Thursday, the 12th of October at our street party. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Tara Marshall for being part of the 3-person presentation to the CHAFA board. Could not possibly have done it without your help and with the support of the community and city council and staff here. So it's one of those times when the entire community came together and we all said, sure, we can do this. Let's go for it. We did, and here it comes. So we're looking forward to things actually starting and hammers being pulled out and hard hats being painted and shovels being used, and get this show on the road. So thank you to all, and we hope to see you out on the street next Thursday, a week from Thursday the 12th.
Ms. Torres, do you have any questions?
I don't. Congratulations.
Thank you, congratulations.
No questions?
Okay.
And from your email, we're gonna have some guests from Denver here too, right?
We hope to, yes, they're confirming as of this afternoon.
And yours is a volunteer position, is it not?
Yes.
Kudos to you, ma'am.
Volunteering it, we kind of tease because we can't be fired very easily, so, sometimes that makes life easier.
Retirement is
But-
far off as well.
Absolutely, yeah, far off. You get too busy in retirement to sit down.
Well, thank you much for all that you do for us.
Well, thank you as a council. We really greatly appreciate all of the support that you've given us since we started this journey in 2011, when we first applied for Creative District. So it just keeps getting better. And no matter where we go to meetings throughout the state, and I'm sure you all find the same thing, Trinidad is the talk. Everyone wants to know how we've done it. And it's very, very, very exciting. So again, thank you to all of you for your support and assistance and financial obligations to this project and every other way that you've all been helpful.
That's why I say, Marilyn, you've done an awful lot of legwork, from the inception of this project. I just wanted to say, congratulate you for an exceptional job, well done. I know it's taken a lot of time. We have a project on board, and there's nothing more gratifying to see a project come to fruition. And I want to say, you being one of the first people on board, thank you.
You're most welcome, and the thanks also goes to the entire Creative District Board management team early on, and we've had a couple of people retire or move on or whatever, but we have a solid team, and we're pleased also to have Michelle Miles as our liaison, our city liaison. So we have a good, strong group, and we don't usually take no for answers very easily. So thank you all.
This was a community effort.
Absolutely, absolutely.
If I could just add a very small thing, I echo everything. I mean, you and Tara were there from the very beginning, Harriet. Just a number of people just were so persistent on this. And the vision really makes a difference in a town like Trinidad. And the sense of excitement in the last board meeting was just powerful. So, thank you.
Welcome.
And to
Let's
Ms.
party.
Bolton too, who was there early in the stage.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So council, our request tonight is to have you approve an entertainment district, which will run from just shy of Animas to Commercial Street, and from 5 to 7:30 next Thursday on the 12th. Okay.
Well, we have a first and a second on the entertainment district approval. Call vote, please.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Matei?
Yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Torres? Yes. Rico?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item E. Consideration of quote for police dispatch consulettes to Digicom Electronics for $32,456.30. Motion to approve the bid.
So moved.
Okay, we have a first and second, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, Chief?
So this is basically a state contract price. That's the lowest price given to the state already. And that was provided by Digicom Electronics. There's little wiggle room. I mean, that's the price.
Okay. Any questions?
The consulettes are replacements or additions?
This is so that I can have a complete dispatch center down at the new PD. Yes.
Gotcha.
The redundant's not gonna be the main site, right?
The PD will be the main site. Yes.
The one
First
on
Street.
Maple.
Yes.
Okay. And that's where this is going?
Yes.
Then does the other one become the redundant
That will be
site?
the redundant site.
Oh, okay.
So this is the last piece. Well, this and the next one are the next two pieces I need to get it complete.
Any question, Ms. Wise?
No, I do not.
Doris?
None?
Okay. Call vote, please.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Matei?
Yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Torres? Yes. Rico?
Yes. Item F, consideration of quote for dispatch navigator system to Digicom Electronics for $47,554.10. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded?
Okay, so this piece is what ties it all in together. The individual councilets, the navigator can group them together, can tone out, and it's, instead of having all the councilets on the dispatcher's console, they have one microphone and the equipment's in the background, and this pulls it together.
Okay. Questions? None? Lopez?
No.
I do have a couple of questions. One of the things that came up in here, and this was possibly taken care of about electrical capacity is inadequate.
Yes.
There was some question early on about the electrical capacity.
Right, right, and we brought a separate panel in just for dispatch to cover the electrical needs of that room, and then the EOC as well.
Okay. And also, do we have a backup generator in case
We do.
failure? Okay.
Yes.
It's also said in there, pricing does not include engineering. Is there any engineering that may be part of this as they come in to do any work on it?
No, this is pretty much just standard equipment that they'll come in and install. All that's gonna be done there in the cold room, it's pretty much follow the directions and put it in.
Yeah.
But Digicom has been our vendor since I've been here, 30 years.
Yeah, I just looked at the exceptions on there. I
Right.
thought I'd ask you on that.
Right.
Okay. No other questions? Call the vote, please.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Matei?
Yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Torres? Yes. Rico?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item G, water lease. Sorry, water lease agreement with Trinidad School District Number 1 for $6,000 a year for irrigation purposes. Motion to approve the lease agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Mel.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Mike Valentine, Utilities Director. Basically, this is a renewal of an agreement that's been in place for years. It's every 3 years, that's what the school district likes. It's for augmentation of water that's used out of a well that they use to water their football field and parks areas at the high school. Because of water law, the water they pump out of the ground has to be augmented back to the river, so we have the water in the dam, we release it. There's a cost involved with that, with our water attorney and such, so this is a renewal, and if you notice, the school district, this one kind of slipped through the cracks on me, they approved it and signed it in June. This is just to endorse our end of the deal, so if there's any questions.
Questions, Mr. Tippett?
Well, my question was, there was dialogue with the school district, if there was, and they had already approved it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Lopez.
Where is this well exactly?
It's kind of down by the football field in it'd be this, correct, southwest corner.
Behind the beauty shop, kind of.
Right.
Oh, okay. That's all I wanted to know.
You bet.
No, that's Stars? I have no questions. Call the vote, please.
Thank you.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Matei?
Yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Torres? Yes. Rico?
Yes. Item H, first reading of an ordinance amending Article 12, Chapter 14, Section 14-214C. Fees to clarify when the weight is to be calculated for purposes of determining the cultivation fee to be remitted to the city for all retail marijuana cultivated, and setting a hearing date for consideration of the ordinance to October the 17th, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Could I have someone to introduce, please?
I will.
Please read the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City Council of City of Trinidad, Colorado, amending Article 12, Chapter 14, Section 14-214C. Fees to clarify when the weight is to be calculated for purpose of determining the cultivation fee to be remitted to the city for all retail marijuana cultivated. Whereas ordinance number 2023 effective March 3rd, 2017 amended the city's marijuana ordinance regarding the city's cultivation fee on retail marijuana to clarify that said fee is due on cultivated marijuana regardless of its endpoint. And whereas the modification made in ordinance number 2023 was intended to capture the fee on all cultivation because it would impact the city's infrastructure regardless of its destination. And whereas further clarification is necessary to require the fee on the entire wetland, which would be the point at which it is harvested, in order to garner the largest offset to to the impact posed to the city's infrastructure in growing each plant. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Trinidad, Colorado, that Article 12, Chapter 14, Section 14-214C, fees is hereby repealed and reenacted in its entirety as follows. Section 14-214 fees. C. Cultivation fee on retail marijuana. When all retail marijuana cultivated inside the city limits of the City of Trinidad shall be subject to a $25 per pound fee due to the city for each cultivated pound produced in the retail marijuana cultivation facility. Weight shall be taken and recorded on the whole plant upon harvest. Such weight shall be used for purposes of calculation of the $25 per pound fee. This fee shall be dedicated to infrastructure, maintenance, repair, replacement, expansion, or new infrastructure system, to include city utilities and public works. Said fee shall be due and payable monthly by the 20th of each month to the Department of Finance. Introduced by Councilmember Fletcher, read and ordered, published this 3rd day of October 2017.
Thank you. Motion to approve the first reading?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Matei?
I think it's long overdue, and it offers a fair and equitable fee to all concerned.
Absolutely.
When is the date again for the public hearing? Is that October 17th?
Yes.
Have we reached out to any of our growing dispensaries, or just cultivators, I should say, and given them a heads up about this in any regards, so that way they can be aware and maybe even show presence during this next meeting?
We have not yet, but we will now that the hearing is set.
Okay. That's the only thing I have.
Miles?
I have a couple of comments. I think I've made this point before, which is when we first started passing the ordinance for marijuana, whether it's dispensary or grows, we were somehow coming up with projections of $1 million in wholesale. And it was based somehow on a $25 fee based on a $300 or $400 per pound wholesale price. We're getting 25,000.
Yes.
So, do we need to? What is the wholesale price? Does the 25 make sense? Should it be higher? I'm just wondering why we're only getting $25,000. And how much will weighing the whole plant make a difference besides, I guess, as you allude to in here, the other way of weighing is just to weigh the buds or the flower? Yeah.
By weighing the whole green plant, it's going to weigh a whole lot more green than
How much
when you
more?
weigh
3 times as much?
75.
Probably.
You lose 75%.
Right, so 3 or 4 times as much. So now we're still at $100,000.
But there's also, I think some of them were just weighing the buds, the product, and by doing the whole plant, it adds more than the 75%.
Okay, 5 times as much?
At least.
Okay.
Part of it too is I think some of these grows are just getting into operation, and so they haven't been producing as much yet as I think was expected. And as they mature and get better at growing, produce more product, I think that will change it too.
Well, I remember coming up with a 25 based upon, I seem to remember 300. It could have been a little bit more, but it's in that range. I see you nodding a little bit, Ms. Marshall. What is the wholesale price? And is the 25 a drop in the bucket? I mean,
I honestly don't know.
I know the market's sorted out.
You know, if I could please, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One comment, the 25 is not based on the market price, it's based on the poundage.
No, I know, but at one point we thought 25 was as much as we could ask if they were only getting 300.
Well, I get you.
So what I'm saying is if it's 3,000, maybe the 25 should be more. Because I remember thinking that 300 sounded low. And is that a question that I can ask?
Sure.
Okay.
I might have an answer partially to that. What I remember is that I remember when the discussion last year came about, partly was because of the fee versus the tax.
Right.
And I think that's where we got into that.
And if I could, to tie into that, it had to be rationally related to the cost of producing the marijuana and the city's utilities that were dedicated in support thereof. So the electricity, the water, things like that, we wanted it to be rationally related to what the production costs were. And not just arbitrary. And we had lots of discussion about that very subject and really try to justify and support the $25 fee on that. And if I could also, I think enforcement has been kind of lax, not to criticize any of my colleagues in the city, but I think we were really kind of relying on being able to get information from the state about how much was being grown and being able to figure that out. I think we're kind of realizing that's not the case. And so a number of these cultivation facilities I think have been growing, have not been really great about what they have grown and reporting on that. So I think it's kind of a multifaceted problem in terms of this. And I really don't mean to sound Pollyanna, but I think there's going to be a lot of money that you're going to see in Shoreline.
Well, to quote Councilman Matei, voluntary compliance, you just have to rely on it, but it always helps to have some sort of enforcement to promote voluntary compliance.
Absolutely.
Also, when we initially contacted the state a few weeks ago, we were told they couldn't provide us any information about the grow operations unless we were doing it from a law enforcement standpoint. And we're doing it more from a regulatory standpoint than law enforcement. And a lobbyist talked to somebody, I think, with the Department of Ag, and now they're willing to give us that information. So it's nice to have her involved when we need her.
All right, that's all I have for
Ms. Torres.
I was just wondering, he kind of answered my question, if there's any way of comparing with other areas that grow, if we're doing it right.
That's a good question.
Well, you know, I'm not sure how many of you read, I read through a lot of the information that they gave us about the cultivation, and it was pretty interesting the way they go through the entire process of growing and what happens.
Inside grows, outside grows. Your technique now?
Yes, I'm gonna change my technique. Stay there.
There's more ways to trim that than there are to cut hair.
But one thing that was interesting they did say is that when they do cut it, they do cut it at the stem, at the ball.
Yes.
So then, rather than, and there was something about the way it grows, well, that was part of that was something totally different. The way the plants bend and all this stuff, it was pretty interesting to read the whole process. But, you know, like I said, that came up last year because it's a fee that we were able to versus a tax, because once you get past that, the tax, then we get into issues with that. So that's an issue that we have. Other than that, have nothing else. Call vote, please.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Matei?
Yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Torres? Yes. Rico?
Yes. Item I, resolution showing City of Trinidad support for continuing improvements to the BNSF rail line used by the Southwest Chief Amtrak in Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico, and committing to a local share of $12,500 if the grant application is successful. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
New Mexico's on board now with
Yes.
their monetary assistance?
Yes.
Did I miss something somewhere?
What they're going to be doing is the state of Colorado, Kansas, and Colorado, New Mexico will both all be putting in $1 million. BNSF and Amtrak are going to be putting in $3 million apiece. And then the communities that are involved are going to be putting this $12,500, just kind of as a support service fee, not fee, but a support amount.
I kind of thought New Mexico wasn't being supportive of it. When did that change?
Evidently last year, I'm not really sure, but I can find out.
I'm not questioning it.
Yeah.
I'm
No, I
just
think
great.
they're on board.
Participate in the prior Tiger.
I think that's wonderful that they're doing. I wonder what made them change their
I
mind.
think, because see, this is the fourth Tiger grant that they've gone after. They had Tiger Grant 6 and 7, which were successful. Tiger Grant 8 fell through last year, so this is Tiger Grant 9. And what will happen with this is that only if we get the grant do we have to expend this amount of money. And I will say this, that more than likely, there will be more in the coming years that the council will have to come up periodically with some additional funding like this to show support.
I have a question. The work is only to be performed for next year or the next time between Raton and Lamy, is that correct?
Yes.
So they just go section at a time between states?
Yeah, because the cost just per mile is, for rail is horrendous. This Tired of rent, 9 is for $25 million. And that's just to do a short section. Ms. Mouth, any questions?
Just a question for you, since you go to all these meetings, how are people handicapping more likely?
That I'm not sure yet, because like I said, I've only been to one meeting, and I'm supposed to have a meeting. Unfortunately, that's next Thursday when I have to be here. Yeah. But I am going, actually, it's this Thursday, and I can't leave because I have the night coming up, and but I probably will be able to call in and listen, and just to call in, I'll be able to do that. And maybe I'll get some answers for you.
Yeah, Phil, do you think somebody from COG might be able to go to that?
You-
Walter or somebody? It'd be nice to
I don't
have somebody
think-
up there.
Yeah, I don't think they would go.
No?
They don't show a whole lot of interest.
No more questions?
Definitely in support.
This does get confusing though when we're talking about the Amtrak 1 minute and the Front Range Railroad the next minute. This one is the Amtrak, so I just wanted to make sure for if people had questions. The other one is being addressed separately.
Good point.
And we, I went to a meeting of COG last week, and Kip Hamden made a request that the multimodal station be included in Trinidad in the TPR, regional transportation plan. And they're looking at that. It's apparently in parts and not in other parts, so they just need to coordinate things a little bit.
Yeah, the way they're running this through is, it's kind of crazy because the long road or the long time projection is to have a rail line from Fort Collins all the way through here and into Albuquerque. Big question is do they stop in Pueblo? Do they go over to Lahana and back this way? Do they go to Pueblo, Lahana, back to Pueblo, down this way? Do they come straight through here? These are all possibilities. And of course, we would like to make sure that we are in line with staying on the rail line going straight through, regardless of what direction they go.
Right.
And that's why I say we need to have someone on that committee to voice our opinion. Any other questions?
Oh, and one of the things that we need to change apparently with the multimodal designation is that right now it's pointed almost entirely at Amtrak. And so we just have to widen out to say passenger rail.
Oh,
So that's,
was that what came up in that meeting last week?
yes.
Find that out, because I'm gonna try to listen in for a while at least.
I have a question regarding that comment. Would there have to be any type of inclusion of, say, automotive transportation, like, say, the Greyhound bus or any other type of transportation in that capacity?
Those are already included in the plan. It's the rail that we have to update because when it was originally put in there, it was targeted just to Amtrak. No, there was no thought given to the.
Any other potential future, right? Okay.
But there's other parts of it. That's why it's multimodal. It deals with every kind of transportation.
Yeah, the original intent through COG was to have the buses stop there and the COG transportation system locally.
Right. I remember they were gonna do that whole thing down by the old one, and it was a debacle.
Well, there's no room for it.
There's no one to man it out there.
Listen, do you wanna go?
No, I'm fine. I'm gonna be where you are.
Okay. Call vote, please.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
McKay?
Yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Torres?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes. Item 8, council reports, starting with Ms. Torres, do you have anything for us?
I don't
Only item on consent agenda.
You've been busy. Raise your hands.
Ms. Miles?
Yes, a couple things. I mean, we're all very happy about the creative district results. And, again, I think I really encourage the community to come to the party on the 12th. It could be a real morale lifter. And in that same vein, I just have to make comments about what you did to make all the difference in our getting. We lost Chaff a year ago. We got it this year. It's no coincidence. It's worth spending time up in Denver. I would change the application a little bit, but if you wanna get something done, you gotta go up north, and you've taught us all that, so thank you on that. Let's see, ARPA, something interesting happened. We were listening to a presentation by Nebraska Municipal Power Pool. Had some difficulties with our wholesale power supplier, and so they came out to talk to us. And if the contract breaks, they may be an alternative source of electricity for us. But in any case, there was a nice half-hour, 45-minute presentation, and they mentioned something about doing infrared audits of old buildings. And I was very curious about that. We provide that service for free. I suppose we probably have to be buying electricity from them, but they do provide the service. And then they follow on with demand-side services, which basically are provisions that allow you to become more energy efficient. In other words, to lower your demand for the product as a way of lowering your bill. And they were very encouraging about that. And then Mayor Rico asked if there were some grants. And they started talking about all these grants. I've called them to follow through on all of this, and I have not gotten a return call, but it's only been a day. But something I'd really like to follow through on, Mr. Sund, we've talked about having city matching grants. Well, why not make it 2 or 3 ways, for commercial buildings downtown? So I'm going to be spending some time on that. Good news, we're at the late stages of negotiating a contract for the sale of the power plant. And we've been a little concerned that, if something didn't happen, we might have to piece it out. But it looks like we've got something good going, and we're beyond one critical hurdle, which had to do with the performance bond for the contractor disassembling the plant. I don't want to talk about terms at this point, but it was very good news. We went through a failed mediation with Babcock and Wilcox. We've been awarded $8 million in judgment from Babcock and Wilcox. They are appealing the verdict, and we are cross-appealing. And anyway, there's going to be another mediation date set to see if we can come to some terms on that. But what we're advised by counsel is that our arguments are very, very strong as far as being upheld. So, lastly, since our last council meeting, Olga reorder passed. So I just want to make a comment. Anyone who is interested, there'll be a mass set at 10 a.m. at Holy Trinity tomorrow. Yeah. And God bless you, Olga, and God bless you, Joe Jr. and Danny. And that's all I have.
I wanted to make a comment that regarding the Youth Club of Trinidad. Currently, we have implemented our Send Hunger Packing program, which is a Colorado Care and Share Initiative nutritional program that we have received weekend supplies for our members, and they're able to take food for a family of 4 home. So we just got that first donation, or the first receivement, if you will, of food. So that's been implemented. Tomorrow, Colarelli Construction will also begin implementing our vocational workshop over there on the site, which is basically a tough shed, but we want the kids to see it get erected so that we can start getting into our vocational skill building programming. We have also started a cheer program, which a lot of the other kids are having a good time with, and a lot of local people are contributing donations to assist in uniforms, which is a very healthy thing. And last but not least, we got a very nice donation from Rooted for our robotics program that we will hopefully be able to get the kids started with, so later they can go on to TSJC with a little bit more knowledge as opposed to going into it completely green. We hope to kind of complement what the library is doing at this point in time, and hopefully we can enhance whatever it is that they have done and maybe take it to the next level. I also wanted to give my condolences to the Gonzalez family, Mr. Bernard Gonzalez, his wife, Louise, passed away. I feel really bad about that. Anyway, that was my little comment on that.
Yes. I had a question with regards to the issue that just doesn't ever seem to get answered on the use of the water for hemp out east. And I'm wondering if our lobbyist could get a definitive answer for us.
Well, what it is right now, there is some legislation that was put forward by Senator Gardner and Senator Bennett, and I think one or two others, and I'm not sure what it, because it still has to do with the Europe land reclamation or water reclamation. They're the controllers of this whole mess, and until they give a green light, we can't do that.
And also, it's still considered a class 1 drug.
Until they change that.
The federal government needs to change that. Senator Gardner wasn't real hopeful about it before that, because he said even if the state were to pass something, a farmer who grows it would maybe be ineligible for every other federal farming program out there. So I mean, they can get really mean.
Okay, so that, can I take that as a definitive answer, so we don't?
We don't hunt it, do we?
Yeah, I just have some questions that I was hoping.
The reason why they grow, they're using the groundwater.
Okay.
They're not using water that goes through the river.
Right, but Pitkin County has a similar situation where they have a Army Corps of Engineer building, and then the water beyond that is being utilized, and the Department of Reclamation has turned a blind eye to their growth. So I think they're just picking who they like more than others.
That could be.
Senator Gardner made a statement at a meeting that you and I went to that whatever runs through that dam is a state rate, not a federal rate. So we'll see how far that goes.
But no, we're not gonna let this slide. I mean, we need to monitor this to come up with a definitive answer at some point.
Okay, I guess my question then would be, is she on top of it? Is she going to meetings? Is she able to inform us the status and all that
I
stuff?
don't think she's going to meetings. I think the biggest thing is I think that we need to just periodically just check with our senators and see what's happening. Now, we could ask our lobbyists to kind of stay on top of it. She might be able to do that.
I would ask that, yeah.
She's state.
She's mostly state legislation, not federal.
That's true.
No, but I mean, is with regards to like this, if there's any change coming up in this in the status of the water in Colorado,
The best person for that would be their liaisons, which would be Kathy Garcia, and I forget the lady's name from Senator Butt or Congressman Butt's office.
So you're saying we should be the ones to ask that, not her, not Kathy?
Now, what I do is I do
Kathy,
email her
yes.
periodically, and I will mention that to her on my next email.
But not Debbie.
It wouldn't be Debbie.
Debbie deals with the
I
state
mean,
legislature.
Yeah, I met Debbie. Well, I'm sure they're discussing it up there. I remember the question I asked when we were up there for the World Legislative Days. I asked that question about the water, and that one from over on the western slope somewhere said, we're using federal water. And he had been sitting in on those conferences, and he said, absolutely, we're using that. That's all been cleared.
Unfortunately, we have.
There doesn't seem to be an answer that anybody agrees on.
You know, we have a water, I'm not sure what he's calling, Jack Montoya.
Yeah.
But he's the person in this area, and he goes by that letter. I'll be honest with you, I've had multiple conversations with him on this issue. And he goes by the letter of what that thing says.
Well, that could be 5 months old. I just would, my request would be to get her, to maybe pass down some information.
Well, let me get with, or email, Garcia, Kathy Garcia, see if she's found out anything different.
Okay. The other, I'm not done. The other thing is, donuts and coffee with the police coming up on the 4th, that's tomorrow. Sunshine Donuts.
I think it's just a comment from the.
What's that, what are you talking about?
I'm sorry, this is the side, I apologize.
Oh, okay. 7:30 to 9:30 tomorrow, over at the Donuts, Sunshine Donuts. Donuts with a cop, right, Chief? That'll be fun. And of course, meet the candidates, the following night, Thursday night, not to be missed. That would be interesting. I think that's it for me. I am done.
It's hard to follow her. It's like sitting at this end of the blackjack table. You got it before you mess it all up.
Next time I'll start with you then.
No, my attempt to be funny notwithstanding, I apologize. We don't have a whole lot to report, except that, to listen to the things that are happening in the police department, for the Blues Fest committee to be able to give money back to the community, and for all those good things to happen. Reminds me several years ago when, and I will say, my uncle was seated on council, and as Pueblo has welcoming posts at the north and south end of the interstate at their city limits to say, welcome to Pueblo, hometown of heroes, and things of that. They make a big damn deal out of that, and they well should. Okay, but my uncle then suggested years ago, and it's more applicable now, that maybe we should think about something like that, with the phrase, welcome to Trinidad, where people work together to make good things happen. And that's coming more and more to fruition. Just listen to what's going on at the youth club, and how the people you are working together are making a good thing happen. And I think that it's something we need to revisit and take a look at that for whatever it's worth. And I realize it would be a costly and unintended proposition, but it's worth the merit.
And that could be part of the branding that they've been working on. That could be part
Precisely.
of it.
But it's never been more true than in present circumstances.
Mayor, I have one more thing.
You may.
I'd like to go to that meeting unless Carlos would, the supportive housing in Pueblo on the 19th and 20th. Is anybody else signed up to go with you? Mallory is, I think.
Mallory is, and also Councilmember Lopez.
Okay, then you know, then I don't need to go.
One of you can come with, it doesn't hurt to have an extra pair of ears.
I think we'd be well served if you would like to go.
That's been an issue of mine for a few years. I'd like to go. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
You got it. That's all.
A couple things that I've got is just to let you know that Greg, Councilman Donato, and I went to Fort Carson a couple of weeks ago, and we had a tour of some of the by air. We had a helicopter, and then we stopped, had lunch. That's the first time I met General George up there. Very pleasant person. Of course, Colonel Fish was there, and several other people from the Army were there. And just had a good, nice day, didn't it? Would you agree?
I was very impressed with all the soldiers we got, their knowledge and what they could tell you, and it was just mind-boggling to think that they could keep all that stuff straight on just technical issues.
One of the things that was pretty interesting is we actually, after we got off the helicopter, we were able to go tour some of the areas where they actually had some ongoing trainings that were going on, and we went to one where they were showing all the drones, and listened to how they operate. And it was interesting to me is that they can fly at an elevation of 16,000 feet for 9 hours at a time. And I forget how many kilometers they said that they would travel. So they can stay up in the air, and all they really have is a gas tank the size of a lawnmower. So it was amazing to me, and just to listen to them how they operate is kind of cool.
And the battlefield drones are different than the ones that drop the bombs and stuff. And and they were saying how the topography out here works great for their training, because they, in a battle situation, will run into ridges and valleys and things like that. And this drone can pick up radio signals and bounce them back to somebody on the other side of the ridge, so they don't lose any communication. It's pretty cool.
It was cool. I attended the ARPA meeting last Thursday, was it?
Yeah.
And like I said, it was the first time I'd attended a meeting. It was pretty interesting. And one of the things I mentioned, you talked about earlier about the grants. Yeah. And I started thinking, I said, if there are grants available out there, we are trying to rehab old buildings. Would we be able to apply, or some of the building owners be able to apply for some of these grants, which would enhance our capabilities of offering that to, or them offering that to help sell some of these buildings to rehab them. So, continue to look into it and see what comes up.
Absolutely.
Also, again, I think a lot of staff was there, and Ms. Miles received her award, and congratulations. And like I said, you do a tremendous job for representing our city of Trinidad.
Thank you.
I also, last Thursday, it was Thursday afternoon, after I left that meeting, I had to go to Walsenburg and gave the council government a briefing on the Southwest Chief on the meeting that I attended, and just gave some general information of what I knew. One of the things I wanted to mention, I've had, 3 or 4 people complain, this would be something to take down the road. Exit, I think it's 104, coming off the highway on this end of town, off the 5 Points. Just not very sighted. 14, exit 14. It's just not very, you come off and it just...
It dumps you right into that 5 Points thing down north. And if we're going to work with Laporta and make that really attractive, when you're coming north, it dumps into there, but from the other side, I think we need to work.
So I think that's something maybe we can concentrate on down the road. Because a lot of people are asking, we need to do something with that.
I don't remember if I passed that along, but there's a thing called tactical urbanism now. They use paint to test out different ways to adjust traffic flow and those kind of things. And if it doesn't work, you just wash it off. But it gives you ways to test what works and what doesn't work without huge investments, which roads usually involve very large investments. So that's something we could work on too.
That's all that I have. Reports by city manager.
If you could back up, you had the school security agreement, you took off the consent agenda.
Yes.
So if you could address that.
Address the school security.
Somebody wanted to
The
ask.
one that I asked to be removed from the consent agenda.
Yeah, and just move forward.
That's a pretty significant amount of money, and I realize that the school district at present is struggling, like we all are, at some point.
I met with them, with their finance director the other day, and they are the ones that asked for this agreement to be renewed at this point. We haven't had an agreement since 2013.
Okay.
And it caused, between changes in city managers, changes in finance directors for the city, changes with the school district, it kind of just fell through the cracks. And so they haven't made a payment on this since September of 2015. And they said they need to have a contract in hand in order to make payments on it.
Okay, well,
And so they agreed to the 50,000. They just said that they cannot go backward. They don't have the cash flow to go back and pay us $100,000 back. But I'm trying to work out some other arrangements with them that we can at least recapture some of that money. And then this 50,000 is going forward. The section 2C in here is really the one that addresses the school resource officer. The rest of it, I think, is language that's been in this contract for a very long time because it's mostly pointed at security services.
well, the reason I asked to have it removed and precipitate this discussion is that as it came to my attention today, and I actually today only spent a greater part of time investigating this to include your present comments. I had occasion to visit briefly with Councilman Lopez today at the courthouse, but more importantly, I spoke with the chief. And he tells me that he's paying significantly more than that, but that was the agreed upon price. And I was thinking if there was something, and given Mr. Sandoval's presentation, although it was on his own accord and not acting on behalf of the school district, if there was something that we could do to help them solve their problem in exchange for maybe that debt owner of the building, then that might be where you're going.
That is one of the things we're talking
If I
about. I'll bring that to you as soon as I have something.
I'll reserve my comments and just that we have further discussion later about it to mediate that price for everyone's mutual benefit.
Okay. One thing to bear in mind is that this contract for school resource officer is primarily for the school year. So there's 3 months a year we get the use of those officers too.
Okay, understood.
50,000 is probably a reduced amount because the chief said that the cost is about 62,000.
Correct.
So that's how you can justify it.
And I only bring it up because it's not my position to defend the school district or mediate on their behalf, but at the same time to be a good neighbor about what we're trying to do. I think that's how things get happen is people work together.
Yes.
I'm done.
Comments?
No, I'm done.
Those are my sentiments. Again, we had a brief conversation, and it was Mr. Sun's idea to maybe try to work something out for previous funds and arrears owed to us that I was really appreciative of.
No questions, further comments? Okay. Well, let's go back and review that. There's a motion to approve the school district security agreement renewal with the recommendations brought forward by Mr. Matei of trying to offset some of the cost in that agreement. Motion to approve?
So
Second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Call the vote, please.
Butcher? Yes. Lopez?
Yes.
Matei?
yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Torres? Yes. Reed?
Yes. Okay.
And then, thank you. Thank you for mentioning Boga Riorda's funeral. I was going to bring that up too, so that helps. And then we have a retirement social for one of our employees tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So if any of you could show up for that. And then also I'd like to introduce Andrew Wallace. He's our new AmeriCorps Vista.
Come forward and give us a little bit of her background.
Hello, I'm Andrew Wallace. I was born and raised in Colorado Springs, and so I'm the AmeriCorps Vista. It is a non-profit government partnership, which basically is meant to work on social, community, and economic issues. And so I'll be down here for at least a year. The city has a 3-year contract with AmeriCorps Vista, so I'll be helping out with lots of projects, grants, a lot of different things, anything they basically need.
Duties as directed, right?
Yep.
Got it.
What do you feel are your strong points?
I would say economic development and community development. So I got a major in business with emphasis in marketing, and then also a major in political science.
All right. Thank you.
Great to meet you guys.
Welcome.
Where will his office be if we need to get in contact?
The Welcome Center.
All right.
I think on the 2nd floor.
Second floor of the Welcome Center back office.
So it's not a position we're going to have the public coming into all the time. It's his working office. When he's meeting with the public, he'll be everywhere. So, and then we just wanted to do a budget initial presentation at this point. And
is it possible to get these screens turned on for us too? And maybe raise slightly.
It's hard to see them from this angle, so I didn't know. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Why don't you turn that one?
The other.
One turn.
Is that one forward? Oops.
Yeah, you turn them all on.
No,
Okay, right out there.
Give me the clicker.
Well, that's right, the camera racing the TV's up.
Are they on now?
Yes.
Okay. So we want to just run through some of the challenges we faced in developing this budget and some of the solutions we're coming up with. Challenges that some of them are initially our general fund being charged for the utilities. I think although we can justify some of that, I think it's really important to make sure that the utilities stay healthy and that we're able to invest as much money as possible to keep them healthy. I've witnessed way too many cities over the years that used utilities like cash cows, and you never want to go there because they eventually lost them. And then you're back to the same situation. Now you have to find the money that you were using from the utilities to fund you. So you haven't gained anything by losing that utility. And so we want to make sure that that isn't something that we rely too heavily on. Because the utilities are a very capital-intensive operation. It's something that we have to invest a great deal of money in order to maintain them properly. I think all of you and I have talked about the challenge with the water supply line that comes from North Lake. That's an awful big run of water line. And when we have to go to replacing that, it's going to be a substantial investment. Upgrading all of the street lights to LEDs is a project, and we have the money to do that, but we need the money to be able to do those kind of projects more in the future. As we move toward this project to upgrade all of the meters throughout the city and make them radio read, that's a huge savings in time and money for a city. When I did this a few years ago, we went from 2 guys reading meters just for water for 12 to 15 days a week, or 12 to 15 days a month. And after the radio read meters went in, we were doing it for 1 guy for 4 hours once a month. So I mean, it was a substantial change. So that's something that I really think is a great way to make the utilities far more efficient. The Welcome Center state subsidy got reduced substantially. We were getting, I think, $60-some thousand, and now we're going to be getting $3. Initially, we talked about putting this into the general fund, but as we looked at all of the challenges the general fund has and trying to reduce its reliance on the utilities to some extent, as an alternative, we came up with moving the Welcome Center to the tourism tax and having it fund the Welcome Center. I don't think there's any more appropriate way to fund a Welcome Center because it's there primarily for visitors and the way that we promote the city. The tourism board and the Welcome Center can work very well hand in hand that way, and the tourism board can be well aware of all of the costs that are happening with the Welcome Center.
Have you had discussions with the tourism board on that?
Yes, they are on board with it. I'm going to describe something we're going to have to look at though in a few minutes here. One, that they were concerned about the payment on the trolley as something that would hold them back from balancing that fund. And we looked at it, and it truly would, if we keep making those 3-year payments, it would cause it to stay out of balance. We can bring it back into balance if we just pay off the trolley with marijuana money. And you have sheets here that show how we propose to use that, possibly in 2018 to do that payoff. We met with the county administrator and other county officials recently about the amount we've historically been receiving for dispatch. They told us that for 2017, they only budgeted $45,000 instead of, I think, $130,000. So that's a substantial hole in our 2017 budget. And they were pretty much unwilling to commit to how much money they would put into the operation in 2018. They may do 45, it could be less. So we chose at the time we met with them not to seek renewal of the contract or the breakdown, because if they don't think they can meet the requirements that are in the contract, why would we want to renew the contract at this point? So that as they deal with a lot of their financial issues, I think we have to be aware that it's probably going to affect our bottom line for a while if they're not going to pay the share. One of the ways that we got a little innovative and addressed a need that's out there for dispatch that hasn't been addressed in the past is some of our staff met with the ambulance board and asked them to start paying a share of the dispatch services because they benefit from them and they've never paid. So the board is considering that. We don't know how much of it they will be willing to pay or how much we'll be able to negotiate with them, but I think that's a great way to replace a little bit of that.
Is there a way that they could take the number of calls that they take for the ambulance services and kind of do a prorated amount?
In the meeting, it came out that by far the majority of the calls that come through dispatch are police and sheriff's office. Lesser than that is the fire departments and fire districts, and the ambulance service claims they only get about 4 calls a day. I don't know. I don't have any justification for that other than the director saying that's how much, that they use substantially less services, but they seem to be willing to pay. I think we suggested 10 to 20%, so hopefully something in that range.
But Mayor, when Anthony and I were on the 911 board, there was talk back and forth for quite a while on the volunteer fire departments in the outlying areas paying for part of dispatch also. That come up?
They could, but in fact, I think 1 or 2 of them do right now, and they pay the county, and then the county's supposed to pay us.
Oh, sticky.
So we're not sure if that money is getting to us at this point.
Oh boy.
And also, the number of calls they get really from a volume standpoint is really hard to measure. And it's always tricky with dispatch services how you appropriately charge for them. If you do it just on call volume, you have to bear in mind that we have to have a dispatch service if they get no calls.
So if the county doesn't pay their share, how will that affect our 911 system?
The 911 system is still paying us $100,000 a year to dispatch the 911 system.
Would there be a cutback in services or anything like that?
I don't think there's any way to do a cutback in services.
Yeah.
They just are what they are.
So some way you're saying the windfall is going to be made up somehow?
In all likelihood, we're going to end up making it up. We only budgeted $45,000 this year from the county for 2018, and the $100,000 payment from the 911 board, and we're hoping that the budget will be helped if the ambulance service.
Now, if their sales tax passes, that could change too.
It's possible.
Okay.
Now, if that passes, we'll probably renew some other discussions.
If it passes, they'll just be open for 5 days a week.
Yeah. If we let them pay 45 this year, that's it. It's done forever. It's gonna be 45,000.
Yeah.
I to talk to you about what we can do about this. I don't understand the situation really.
I don't
Or I think I do, but
It's very
troubling.
Well, the ambulatory district last year or 2 years ago was approved to DeBruce, so that freed up some of their funds, so they might be able to contribute,
right?
Considering they haven't, and that could tie up 25, 35. I don't know. I'm throwing out arbitrary numbers, but some type of assistance which would take the burden off of us as much.
So what's our share?
I think the entire dispatch is right around $400,000. So when the county only pays 45, we get to eat a lot.
When we were there, the idea of the concept was the city, by virtue of population, picked up 60% of the bill, and the county picked up 40%.
And that's the amount in the contract.
Right, and then the rural fire protection districts argued that, well, because we're in the county and the county pays for us, we shouldn't have to pay for our own. And at that time, I recall, we were trying to get everyone to be billed per click, depending on airtime usage, but to Greg's point, most of that is in law enforcement anyway.
The federal government contributes somewhat to municipalities, don't they?
I don't think so.
Telephone does, your telephone service.
There's a tax on your telephone, some of which goes to fund 911.
And that gets collected by the county.
Well, it's collected by the
it.
911 board, they're a separate board.
There are.
Yeah, close to the phone.
So we should be striving, of course, in reality, we should be striving for where our fee should be around $260,000. About
And the county should be paying their
$220,000.
40%. Now, we could vary that just a little bit if the ambulance service would do something.
Well, and with the development of a city proprietary dispatch facility, it makes it a little bit stronger bargaining tool. I don't know that we would ever want to do that, but it's something that is worthy of consideration.
I know the county has looked at dispatching through the state and other things and other sources, and have found out that the cost is considerably higher.
It would never work.
Well, early on in our careers, we were dispatched through the state, and the county was as well.
You were.
And the county was too.
Yeah, you're right.
So that is definitely a challenge for us. A short time back, the water and wastewater sewer fund were combined. When we met with our auditor a few months ago, I asked about separating them back out, and he was very happy to do that. He said he had to separate them out for reporting purposes, and that was quite a challenge. So they are very different utilities. Running the wastewater operation is considerably less complicated in terms of operations now because we just pay one organization. But by having a divided fund, we can target the sewer rates to capital improvements, those kind of things, and be assured that those rates are tied to those capital improvements and that water isn't covering for it or anything like that. Again, one of the challenges that we have with the wastewater fund is that it's got one more payment left on the wastewater treatment plant. And so we're going to propose that that also come out of marijuana money for in 2017 yet, so that we can get that paid off, and by doing that, the wastewater fund can operate on its own. We need to change the budgeting method. This year we used a traditional method where the department heads put in their requests, and then we matched it to the revenue, found out there wasn't nearly enough revenue to cover the requests in the budget, and so then you spend all this time backing stuff out and having lots of conversations. I think we're better off starting with a base budget and building it from the bottom up rather than building it up and tearing it back down and building it back up again. What we've been doing is far more time intensive, and I think we can get more efficient with it. With the fleet investment, department in the general fund, when we looked into that, that was funded almost entirely by the water fund. And so we're making that funded this year with the part of the marijuana money that we're not putting into the general fund operation side. We just don't feel very comfortable putting very much of that revenue in the operating budget because it just doesn't feel real predictable yet. We could be seeing a sharp increase that will see a sharp decrease in the near future. Anything new goes up very quickly and then starts to level off at a period of time, but it levels off lower than its peak. So those are things that we need to watch. And by switching it to that revenue, we are able to budget all of the revenue for the marijuana part of the general sales tax, not the 5% one. And we moved a little bit of that into the operations because I think we can justify the fact that business and traffic and everything else downtown has improved. It's not just marijuana related. There is an improvement in business. And so we feel that not all of the change in the sales tax is being driven by marijuana.
I have a quick question for you regarding that. In the marijuana revenue spending recommendation chart that you have here for the fleet vehicles, is that listed under the police cars lease slash payoff or purchase payoff, or is it? I'm not seeing it on here.
No, that's in the general budget. That's
In
not
general
in the,
budget.
it's not in the 5%.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry.
We estimated how much money we think we'll take in through the general sales tax, and we're targeting a portion of that to fleet fund, which is 4%.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong form.
And then we've discontinued the use of position allocations for 2017. When we look back, or 2018, when we look back at 2017, those allocations to all of the utilities was $934,000. So that's a substantial charge to the utilities that didn't show up as a transfer or a subsidy because the costs were being charged directly to the utilities. So I don't think it was easy to figure out how much that actually was.
Can I make a comment on that? What we used to do is transfer a whole lot more into the general fund from the utilities. And I think Gabe reformed that and tried to make it somewhat scientific, or at least mathematical. So I guess I'm just making that observation. I thought we'd made tremendous strides last year in reducing, I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago when we were just trying to keep city employees off the furlough days.
I've got a slide here in a little bit that shows how much that's changed and where it's going and how we're trying to improve it a little bit more this year too. We've discontinued the non-discretionary department and started charging those fees, the benefits, employer costs, those kind of things to the individual departments to better show what the cost of operating those departments is.
That makes sense.
Some of the solutions, I think I did mention a little bit ago, we're moving the Welcome Center to the tourism tax. I think it's a very appropriate place to put it. We're funding the fleet department out of marijuana revenues from the general sales tax, eliminating the position allocation, eliminating the non-discretionary department. And by doing this, our transfers from utilities and the use of utility funds for general fund operations, we've reduced by $500,000 in this budget. So I think we're headed in the right direction.
The question I have there is funding the fleet department. Go back, please. It's funding the fleet department with estimated revenues from general sales tax. If there's, like you were mentioning, if there's a drop in that revenue, that's going to, going forward in subsequent years, we got to be careful with that.
Yeah, by putting it in a capital purchase type thing, if we see a reduction, we can adjust the timeline for when we buy vehicles and equipment and when we don't. It's much harder to do that when it's in operation.
And if there's a serious drop off, reasonable serious drop off, and they need vehicles, we need to look at where do we draw money from at that point.
Right.
So that would be the big, pound gorilla in the room. Or
Mhm.
10,000
Yeah,
pound gorilla in the
that
room.
would be a big discussion.
Yeah, big gorilla.
We have reduced the budget for county dispatch to $45,000 just because we think that's what we're going to receive, but we haven't changed the agreement. It still says 64 to 10. So
Why
I
don't they-
don't know what the solution is.
Why don't they
for
just say
certain-
25 and we say, okay? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I understand.
Yeah.
Oops.
Is there anything that the county can do to
We can sue.
offset some of that cost?
What do? You bankrupt them and then you get nothing.
I don't know if there's any kind of services that they could give us. I don't know, that would be a thought. I don't know if they will or not.
I just have
Yeah.
that comes under public safety. There's gonna be an issue on the ballot, specifically funding public safety. Just saying.
One thing we
If
did,
it passes.
one thing we told them when they said they were only gonna pay that much is, we said, well, then we're not going to pay I think it's $16,000 a year in lease payments for the dispatch center and the justice center. So we offset just a little bit of it, but,
You know, here's something is that, you know, in the city, you know, safety pretty much supersedes anything else in the city.
yes.
Don't they have to abide by the same rules?
Apparently not.
Yes.
Well, I would think so. I don't know why they would be exempt from making safety paramount. I don't want to say they seem like they are, or they make it less than paramount, but I would think the same rules would apply.
You know, which I think back they could be pressed to say, you know, your safety comes first versus some of these other issues that you have to deal with. I mean, they're gonna take a hit in other areas, but, you know, their safety, and there's complaints right now across the county about safety.
And strictly speaking, they could be shut down, their 911 could be shut down because of non-payment, you know. That's kind of scary, I mean, for the citizens to think of out there.
Well, I think that's exactly how we're being backed into a corner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I just to be devil's advocate here, they could probably make the argument that, well, we can have the dispatcher, but then not have the deputies, or vice versa. We can have the deputies, but not have the dispatcher. Which one needs the other in order to comply with safety
Not
protocol?
necessarily, they would have to look at other areas in their budget, if they would have to do that, to cut back, if they abide by them.
Oh, I understand that, but then they'll say, well, then we're gonna be closed 4
3
days out of the week.
Right.
Well,
You know what I mean? And I'm just being devil's advocate,
Yeah, I
but I mean, I
understand.
think it's a healthy way to look at something from a different perspective, which, like you mentioned, we're getting backed into this because of their financial constraints.
Mhm.
And lack of foresight.
And I mean, maybe one day they'll be in a healthier situation and they can carry us, but I don't know.
So, anyway, just a thought that I had.
We're splitting the water and sewer funds in this budget. One thing we haven't done at this point that we would still like to explore possibly in 2018 or maybe for the 2019 budget is creating a utility fund out of the landfill. One of the things that we need to have a discussion with you about before we do that though is there's some fees we have to talk about, possibly raising drop-off fees. The tire recycling fee is not covering our cost of recycling tires. If we're going to get into recycling, there's going to have to be a cost to that. Recycling actually costs more money to dispose of than throwing it in the landfill, and usually about 3 times as much per ton. So that's something you always got to consider is the only way to recycle in most cases is to put it in the truck and haul it somewhere. You have to take it to some sort of manufacturer. Well, when you put it on the road, it gets pretty expensive. But there's other things where, with recycling, when we met with Terra Firma, they said that they're 100% maxed out at this point, and the only way that they can increase what they're doing in terms of recycling is if they get additional funding for both manpower and equipment. So those are all things that we have to address. The other thing that truly is an elephant in the room when it comes to the landfill is we have a $3.7 million unfunded liability for closure and post-closure. The more we can recycle, the more we can do composting, those kind of things, the longer we can make the landfill live and the longer we can put off the closure and do more planning and have more time to put money into it. But those are huge issues that need to be addressed.
And that was going to be my question, the offset, because of the $3 million that we're going to have to come up with, and that's just as of today's projection. It's not the projection
It
down
changes
30
every year.
30 years from now, it could be, who knows, $6 million.
Well, no, actually, the technology is getting better on landfills, and I
Well, but-
would want to revisit that 3.7. There's been a lot that's happened over the last 15 years, and
one of the things that drives the closure and post-closure, though, is you have to put a dirt cap, and it has to be compacted to a certain density. You have to guarantee that nothing goes through that cap once you put it on there. And so a lot of it's monitoring. You have to monitor for production of methane. You have to monitor for water infiltration. There's all sorts of issues that the EPA has just determined you have to do to a landfill today.
Is that coverage 3 foot or 6 foot? I've heard 6 foot, I've heard 3 foot.
And I've heard 2 or 3. So but it has to be compacted. So when it started out, it was probably 6 or 8. But it's you can go way above the ground. You can create a separate mountain almost if you want to go that high. I know of one solid waste service that put a 800-foot hill next to a town by the time they were done. That was waste management. So I don't know if you want that, but that is something you can do with a landfill. You can go up quite a bit.
Ski slope on it.
And then these are the changes in the historic use of the utility funds. So we had in 2014, the utilities provided 1.3 million of financing, about 1.3 in 2015, 2.2 in 2016. It backed down to 1.5 in 2017, and now we're proposing 1.16.
So you're talking about transfers into the general fund?
Into the general fund. And so I think we're going the right direction, but we need to continue to do this. And the challenge with that is we have challenges in revenue in the general fund and how we continue to make that pay for as we ratchet down this. The costs continue to go up in the general operation. So it's going to be more and more of a challenge each year.
Do other municipalities do this?
Yes, they do it. They do it for all sorts of different reasons. Some states let you pull 20% out of your utilities, and some cities do 20%. They don't account for it in any way.
We're closer to about 7.
I think you need to be able to justify every dollar you pull out of the utilities. We charge them payment in lieu of taxes because it's untaxed. I did a spreadsheet that divides certain people that are accounted for in the general fund, including myself, that spend time working in the utilities, and it breaks down per utility and percentage-wise, and it's very easy to see, and we'll probably put that chart in the budget document when it's done so people can see exactly why we're transferring and how much we're transferring.
Is there a target that is recommended that we try to achieve a percentage?
There really isn't. They're just all over the board. What we really need to do is, as we have more money available in the utilities, we need to find out if that's funding them properly and whether they're able to do capital improvements. But it's hard to justify raising costs on the utilities if you're transferring a whole lot of it into the general fund. And this seems like a lot of money, but the utilities are big operations, and we have several people who are involved in managing the utilities. They control a lot of land, so they should be paying their share of property taxes. These are the things that we're proposing to do with the 5% marijuana revenues in 17 and 18. The paying off the trolley debt, wastewater treatment plant debt payoff, that's about $400,000. The trolley is a little over $160,000 payoff. The police vehicles, I think, are somewhere in that range, 100 and some thousand. Fire pumper, we would pay that off. The street sweeper's about $135. And in the union negotiations, this is a subject that came up. We were talking about how much liability we carry for the sick leave accruals that some of our employees have, and that's going to, if we don't plan for it, that could choke us someday if we have several people retire. And when you have the baby boom generation, that can happen fairly quickly. So these are primarily for employees that have been around since '98 or earlier, so they were allowed to accumulate far more leave at the time. And one of the suggestions was, well, why not use marijuana money to pay that off? And you get kind of worn thin about that becoming the go-to revenue. But we have not had dedication of all of that money yet for this year, nor for, well, we do now with these other things, but for the next 2 to 3 years. And I think over that period of time, if we stretch this out over a 2 or 3 year period, we'll have the additional $1 million that we need to be able to fund that, and then that's not a concern anymore.
Those employees, have they been capped?
Not yet. That's part of the union negotiations. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we did, but we have not put our fingers in that.
Questions?
I'm recalling we talked about this last year, that issue.
But
I don't remember what we did.
Because of the union involvement, such we can't do anything about it.
Until after the
It
negotiations.
continues to sift through.
Well, and even in negotiations, it becomes how hard do you want to stand on an issue? Because if you won't budge, you're going to go to arbitration and all that other stuff. So.
Yes.
And that's not always a bad thing. I don't think we should shy away from that. If there's issues that we just don't feel the city can budge on, we have to be willing to stand up.
I have a question. As I was going through this proposed expenditures over the next few years, I didn't see Councilmember Miles' recommendation for utility subsidization.
I think that's in there starting in 18.
Where is it listed though on the ledger? That was the only thing I couldn't see. Because I was looking for it and I'm going through all these.
Yeah, that was the answer the last time, which was that it was going to be.
Household business energy imps?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, that's what they're doing, because I didn't think it was going to be for households, I thought it was just for commercial entities.
Well, I just wanted to give a real general
Yeah, I
title
think
at
it
this
should be
point.
commercial, but, you know.
Okay, that's the only thing okay, that's why I didn't see it then, I apologize.
That's okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are these, is this all 17? The rest of 17?
No, this is 17.
This is
17 and 18, okay.
most of this is things that we've run into in 17 that we're trying to plan for in the 20.
Okay, fair enough. Counselor, you have any?
Just a few things, Mayor and council members. I would like to let you know my evaluation is coming up. It's actually, I know, it's actually overdue.
We have John McCain over here.
So, yeah, that's right. So, if it's okay, probably on the next council agenda for executive session after the meeting, if that's acceptable. It is again. Meet the candidates this coming Thursday. Ms. Garrett has very nicely agreed to present with me on the charter ballot initiatives and charter amendments. So looking forward to that, and we'll be presenting the city's position.
What time is that, Les?
6.
It begins at 6. And all
6, and it's going to be in the Wasari?
It is going to be in the Wasari, that's right.
Who's going to be narrowed down?
I don't know.
They have members of the media, so the KCRT, World Journal, and I believe the Chronicle News will have representation.
Like it was before, okay.
I think so. And I know it's a chamber event, so it may be John Schechter who's like doing the. I saw Linda Barron recently, and she doesn't know she's going to be there.
And they will also be receiving questions from the audience to ask the candidates as well.
And may I ask a question? Is it going to be on YouTube?
It's going to be live.
Live?
Trinidad
live
Times
stream?
TV 71.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Good.
And on YouTube?
That
is the YouTube channel.
Oh.
And the only, the last thing I have last but certainly not least, it's Councilwoman Torres's birthday today.
Yeah.
And it's it's a significant birthday. There's no way.
We should sing.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
Right?
Then pull out the hat like they do at tequilas.
Get the sombrero. Can we borrow your hat? We got a hat.
So,
I'm fine.
happy birthday. So that's all I have.
Okay, on to item 10, executive session. We have two items. Item A, for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and/or instructing negotiators under CRS Section 24-6-4024E, Monument Lake proposals. Item 10B, for a conference with the city's attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS Section 24-6-4024B, and/or for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and/or instructing negotiators under CRS Section 24-6-4024E, ARPA litigation matters. Motion to move into executive.
May I suggest an alternative? Can we switch the order of these things? Because Bob Faddick is here.
Sure.
And so that way we can get him out of here.
Yeah, we can reverse those out. So motion to approve with the reversal, item B becomes A and A becomes B.
So moved.
Second. Vote please, call vote.
Fletcher,
Yes.
Lopez.
Yes.
Tay,
Yes.
Miles,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Rico.
Yes.
Staying here?
Yeah, there might be a few people that may want to attend later on, so we probably ought to just go into the conference.